Hello, everyone. Today on CSA Conversations, we are hosting Mike Massimino, a former NASA astronaut, a New York Times best-selling author, a Columbia University mechanical engineering professor, an advisor in the Intrepid Sea Air and Space Museum. He's a veteran of 2 space shuttle missions and 4 spacewalks. And I think, as far as I believe, he successfully completed the most complicated spacewalk ever attempted to repair the Hubble Space Telescope. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying all those things because it's a surreal experience. I'm talking to a former NASA astronaut. And he's a frequent guest on different news and TV programs, including Good Morning America, The Today Show, CNN, Fox News Channel, MSNBC, CNBC. And is this correct, Mike? You have been called the real-life astronaut who inspired George Clooney's role in the movie Gravity.
I was called that. Now I'm not saying that I was, but I was called that. That was
okay.
That ABC News, which is a news network here, very trusted. In fact, it used to be called your trusted source here in America. ABC News, when the movie came out, they on their news program, they made me the person of the week. And they kind of insinuated that the George Clooney role was okay. So the story behind the only truth to that I've heard is ABC News reported that, but I did speak to the director of the film, and what he said he did do is that he listened to my tapes when I was in space. We did an IMAX movie about on my last flight. It's called Hubble 3D, IMAX Hubble 3D. And so it was a Warner Brothers film, and the Warner Brothers also was the production company for the Gravity, so with the film Gravity. And so the director did tell me that he listened to my tapes, the way I talked and so on, and that helped him with his direction of George Clooney. But I blame it all on ABC News. I'm not, that was a rumor that was going around, and I did not encourage it or stop it. But that's what I've heard.
They got inspired from your astronaut position to just create a movie.
I don't know. I think George Clooney was a very cool astronaut, so I take it. That was fine.
That's good.
Yeah, but that was the rumor.
There's another thing. I don't think it's a rumor. You had a recurring role as yourself on the CBS comedy, The Big Bang Theory. I loved watching it. I need to rewatch again to see you in the show. I watched, though, the Late Show that you have done it with David Letterman, I think 10 years ago, if I'm not wrong. But it's quite exciting. It's all surreal, as I say. It's amazing. So welcome again to CSA Conversations, and thank you very much for the time. And we'll have a very exciting journey, not in the space, but on the screen. But you will make us feel as if we are in space, apparently.
I'll do my best.
Thank you. So I want to start the questions with my 7-year-old nephew question, if you allow me, because I promised to start with that. I know many children dream to be astronauts, and it looks like you have fulfilled that dream. They always say the sky is the limit. Apparently, for you, it wasn't. So you reached the sky and you went beyond. So when you look from the top, from above, how does the planet Earth look like, and how does re-entering the Earth atmosphere feel like? Can you describe it?
Yeah, certainly. There's a lot to that question, and yes, it is something that I wanted to do very early on when I was a little boy, but I never thought it could be possible. I do have a picture I can show you quickly here. This is me dressed up as an astronaut when I was 6 years old with my astronaut Snoopy. The reason that flight suit is gray is because my mother converted an elephant costume. I was an elephant in the first grade play, and she made it into an astronaut costume. So yeah, it is something I wanted to do at a very early age. I didn't see myself doing that. Back when I was first got interested, it was most of the astronauts were military test pilots, and I could not see myself as doing that. I was afraid of heights. I still don't like heights, and yes, that is a problem. I've had to learn to deal with it. And I don't like going fast. I just never thought that. I don't see very well. We were talking about that earlier. You're wearing glasses. I don't see very well. I was actually medically disqualified by NASA, and I was rejected 3 times trying on my applications. And the disqualification with my eyesight, they didn't accept any LASIK. This was years ago. what I did is I trained my eyes to see better. And now it's not an issue. Now they don't have those same requirements for vision, but they did 25 years ago. But I was able to train my eyes to see better and get by the eye exam to try again a fourth time. And that's when I got picked. So yeah, it is something I wanted to do. And it was a dream that I just couldn't stop trying. I felt like they could tell me no. I understood it probably wasn't going to happen, but I felt the only thing I could do was control my effort. You know, you can control the effort, but you can't always control the outcome. But certainly I wanted to keep trying. And finally I got in after these 4 tries, and it met all my expectations. And it's interesting that you go from that trying for the dream and then realizing the dream. I'm going to show you another picture of our planet of what it looks like from space. And this is a region you might recognize. It's a Gulf region, from just beautiful.
Okay.
And when I had a chance to really look at our planet, the thought that went through my mind was, you know, it's so beautiful. I'll just show you that picture again. I'll talk to you while I'm showing you that picture. But I looked at our planet and I said to myself, the thought that went through my mind was, this is like a view from heaven. If you could be up away from our planet, this is what you would see. And I dwelled on that for a few moments, and I thought, no, it's more beautiful than that. This is what heaven must look like.
That's
and
true.
I felt like I was looking into an absolute paradise. And I like the question because it ties in the dream and in the realization of the dream. I remember also thinking that when I was seeing that view of our planet, when I finally got up there to see that and to do the work on the Hubble Space Telescope, of course, but that moment of realizing how beautiful our Earth was and that I made it to space made all that work and the trying and all the sacrifice worth it. So yeah, the view of the planet is so wonderful. It makes all the hard work to get there worth it.
Oh my God. And it's probably a very humbling experience or an eye-opening one. Like, as you say, you just all of a sudden thought that the paradise is there.
Yeah, no, it's, you know, some people have asked me, like, you know, do you feel small? You know, do you feel like, you know, oh, yeah, because you could, you know, you see our planet and you look the other way and you see the universe out there, you know, like, whoa, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there. Yeah. And, you know, we're just in this little place, but I don't think, I actually felt like we are very special and very lucky to be here. And we have the most beautiful home in the universe. I think if we had a contest for the most beautiful planet, we would win. I don't see any place being more beautiful than our planet. And therefore, I think we are pretty special. We're very, very fortunate to live in such a beautiful place. And we need to take care of it too. The other thing you realize when you're looking at it, and some of these most of these observations that I made were during spacewalks, because during a spacewalk, the whole world opens up to you. You're not looking through a window and you can look anywhere you want. And looking at our planet, you can see not only is it beautiful, but it's fragile. And you can see the atmosphere. The atmosphere is just a thin blue line above our planet when you look at it. And if you think of the Earth as like an onion or an apple, you know, the atmosphere is just the skin of that, just the very thin layer on top. And that's how thin the atmosphere is in relation to the rest of our planet. And the only reason we can do these things in space is because we wear a spacesuit with life support. And we've checked out the neighborhood. You know, we've looked around. You can look out I looked around. There's no other place to go. This is the only place we have to take care of it. So I did not feel like, you know, we were at all small or insignificant when I saw it. I quite the opposite. I felt, and I guess a revelation, if you want to call it that, was that we are really lucky to be here. We've got a beautiful place to live. I can't imagine any place being more beautiful. That's amazing. Think there might be life somewhere else, but I can't imagine that any planet is as beautiful as ours. That's
an interesting remark, actually. That's an official approval that we live on the planet Earth. We live in paradise. So we need to value more. So. We need to value more what we have and then protect more what we have.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're very lucky to be here, and I can't imagine any place more beautiful than our home planet.
Great, yeah. Great. I mean, that's another interesting question. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, we are all experiencing, the whole world experiencing this pandemic process all together as one team. And we experience both quarantine and isolation and sometimes lockdowns. When you go to the space, before you go to the space mission, you just yourself experience the quarantine and isolation. You need to do that. I think, can you talk about this process as well? Why do you isolate yourself before you go to space mission?
Yeah, it's interesting, Gamze, because a lot of what we're going through now reminds me of what I went through as an astronaut. And it's not just the quarantine, because we had to be away before we go to space. As you mentioned, we go into a quarantine for a couple of weeks where we're not allowed to be near small children. We're living in a very hygienic, clean environment. Not very many people. If anyone that comes near us within, I think our rule was actually 10 feet. So anyone that come within that close to us had to be checked out by the doctor. Some people needed to, our spouses, some of our family members, to see us socially, but also the people we work with. So everyone had to be healthy that were going to come near us. We wore the masks like we do now here and around the world. We kept our distance from people. We washed our hands. We really tried to maintain that effort in the quarantine. And of course, we were separated from what everyone else in the world was doing. But it was necessary to try to keep us healthy, just like it is now. So that's one part of it. But I think what's even more, compelling or more appropriate was the idea of just being away, of being separated by a distance. And we would practice that when our jobs in space would take us to space. And we were with our other astronauts, but that's only a few other people. The thousands of people that were supporting us, that trained us, that were watching over us and helping us, they were on the Earth. They were a long way away, and we're in our spaceship. And then you would get to a point. I'm going to show you a picture of me on my first spacewalk here. That's me on my first my spacesuit, right? You can see the Earth reflected in my visor. When you get inside of that spacesuit, you feel even more alone. You're the only, and you get outside the spaceship, you're in your own your spacesuit is kind of like your own spaceship.
You're isolated in the universe, I think.
What's that?
You are isolated in the universe by yourself.
On one of my spacewalks, on my second spacewalk, I went out the door first. And so you always go out with another person. You have a teammate, in a spacesuit with you. He's in another spacesuit, but I remember going out and being outside and realized I'm the only guy out here. Everyone else was inside. Everyone else was, either on Earth or inside. I'm the only guy out here right now. And then, my buddy came out to join me. So, but you have that feeling, even, of kind of like you're away and you're alone. And I made a really bad mistake. And one thing that you learn is you're going to make mistakes in life, right? They happen. And it's how you deal with them, I think, is what's important, and how you get help and you allow people to help you and your team, and how you can give help to people. And I remember making a critical error while fixing the telescope. I stripped a screw during a procedure. It was just, we had no backup for it, and I felt terrible. And I remember looking at the planet and thinking, anybody that can help me is down there. The hardware store where I could buy something to fix this is a long way away. I can look down to this. What am I going to do? I felt so alone.
You can't order either. You can't order anything either.
No, I couldn't order anything. Even Amazon delivery wouldn't work up there. Nothing. I only had a few hours. I mean, what are we going to do? We can't land. Get some. This is terrible, and I felt so bad about it. But what kept me going was my control team, and I'll show you another picture of these guys in the control room here, coming up here shortly. Here it is. So this guy on the right is our flight director, Tony Sacacci, and the guy on the left is my astronaut classmate who was our Capcom talking to us, Dan Burbank. They're in the Mission Control Center. And when I created this problem, no one's blamed me. Like Mike, look what you did. You ruined our mission. Everyone supported me, and I could hear them. They were a long way away. And what they did was it was a Sunday afternoon. They had someone in the back room, one of the support people, had an idea of how to fix it. He called to the Goddard Space Flight Center, which is in Maryland, and a whole nother place in the United States. But they called them. They did a test. They radioed back with a videotape of how I could fix it. They told us what to do from Houston. They talked about it. They told us what to do in space, and we did it, and it worked. And I was feeling I felt so badly when this was going on. But the team was still with me. And that's what I think we need to remember now, is that even though we can't see each other, even though we're separated by distance, everybody is still there for us. And so what I try to remember now is, and what I try to help tell audiences, is that when you need help, reach out to your Mission Control Center. and when you need that, because everyone's still there, and try to be mission control center for someone else. Be the person that they can reach out to and when they need help. And I think that that's really what has gone on. I think that has been helpful for me in the pandemic, and that I try to encourage people is because that's what we train to do. We train to work from a distance.
Yeah.
And our team was not just across another part of the world. They were on a different planet than we were. And that's what we learned to do. And you can still do it, but you have to keep up the communication channel and don't feel alone. You're not in this alone.
And you need maybe a very sharp skill set to deal with those types of problems, like perseverance, resilience.
Absolutely.
As you say, you combine different, team building roles. Everybody has a strength, probably. They just come together to just build different skill sets together to just have a kind of teamwork all together. And you need to stay healthy. You need to stay safe. Safety probably is an important topic, and you need to stay focused so that you don't lose the track of things. And as you say, it's very relatable to corporate setting and business nowadays. You don't need to be in space, but it's again like a space exploration. The same analogy can be applicable to business.
I think so. Yes, I think when you're in these situations where you make a mistake, some of the things I learned were, as I said, you're always going to make a mistake. It's how you deal with it. You're always going to be put in difficult situations. It's how you deal with it. I think the mark of a team is not when things are going great. When things are going great, everyone's happy. No, it's not, no problem. That's great. What happens when things aren't going great? When you're facing disappointment, tragedy, your failure? Do you still remain intact as a team? And that's where I think you find the mark of your team. And that was the case in space for me when we had a space shuttle accident. The flight after mine on Space Shuttle Columbia didn't come back. It was a great disappointment, but we weren't going to let that stop us. We used that disappointment to try to encourage us, to motivate us to continue to do even better. And we were able to continue with the space shuttle program after a bit of time after we recovered. So I think recovery, as you said, is very important. Just like we're dealing with now with the pandemic, of recovering from it. You're gonna make mistakes. There's nothing we can do about this. You're gonna make mistakes. And one of the things I try to remember when I made my mistake in space, I called it the 30-second rule. I learned this from a friend of mine, CJ Sturkow, Marine pilot, told me in a simulation one time. He said, when I made a mistake, he says, 30 seconds of regret. And I said, what does that mean? He says, 30 seconds, feel bad for 30 seconds, be really upset with yourself, but then you have to move on because your team needs you. So move on from those mistakes. Recovery is really important. I think that things are going to happen, just like this pandemic, but it's important not to get too down. You can feel bad. That's okay, but you have to move on, and you can't dwell on it. And rely on your team. You mentioned something about different skills. We had a very varied astronaut. I'll give you an example of I'll show you my astronaut class here. There we go. It's coming up here. Let me get to the right slide.
That's exactly.
Okay, there it is. That's my astronaut class. We had, that's me in the second row from the left, second row from the top, third from the left. And that guy I just mentioned, Dan Burbank, is to my right in the photo. He was the guy in the Capcom. If you look down, second row from the bottom, second from the left is Soichi Noguchi. Soichi's in space right now. He's a Japanese astronaut. But what you see is you see a lot of diversity, and it was diversity not in just different countries and different gender and different backgrounds and ethnic makeup, but also in capabilities. And that's what you want in a team. You want everyone, if everyone thinks the same way, you're never going to get the job done. People have to have different skills, different abilities, so that when you combine, you're very strong. And I think now we're in a situation where we need to rely on the different skill sets, rely on each other to get through this difficult time. And I think we're going to be much stronger for it. I think looking forward, I think it's going to be a lot of success awaits us if we can. We just have to get through this.
Me too. I hope
hopefully
so.
We're done with it. but I think again, this is where it really matters for us. So we'll all be doing our best.
Yeah. I mean, there is always a saying, when you get stuck in life's insignificant small problems, when you get bored and when you really can't start complaining about small issues, we are always advised to look up at the stars and in the sky. So see the big picture with bird's eye view. I mean, from an astronaut perspective, how do you see that? This advice is relatable? Do you think it's a right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, I'm getting another picture to show you here. This is when I think of the big picture, Gamze, this is what I think of. I think of this.
We can lose
I think of a Hubble. This is a picture taken by the Hubble Space Telescope after we fixed the telescope.
Oh,
and this was one of the first images. And this is a star field in Omega Centauri. It is a star field that's got, in this one frame, every dot you see is a star, like our sun is a star. And there's 100,000 of them in this one frame, part of a larger star field with over 10 million stars. That's just one little section of the sky. And I try to remember that as the big picture, because you can often, even as an astronaut, you can often get caught up in the details of life. It was a wonderful job, but it's also a difficult job at times. You're away from your family a lot. There's a lot of stress. It's a bit dangerous. Good things and bad things can happen. So it's not always perfect. You're working hard, just like everyone else is, and there's disappointment, tragedy, and so on. But I think it's important to remember why you're doing what you're doing. And I think of that picture because, to me, that's why we did what we did to the Hubble Space Telescope on our missions, why we took the risk, made the sacrifices we did. That's why we did it. It was to not only do something that we found enjoyable, but it was to give the world these beautiful images and this information and unlock the mysteries of the universe. Yeah. And that's what the telescope did. And so I try to remember that as a big picture, because even what I'm doing now, since being an astronaut, I still think what I'm doing is important. I think everyone hopefully should feel that way about what they're doing. And that should keep you going when it gets tough and when there's disappointments and sacrifices and everything else. Remember that big picture is, I think, really important for you to not lose sight of, because everyone has an important role to play here. And you don't want to forget that, although it's easily done.
It's quite difficult, sometimes challenging. Yeah. And can we just say, Houston, we have a problem, and then Houston can answer back and fix
You can try that. Yeah, hopefully that's what I'm saying. You got to find somebody. It might not be Houston, but have that person, have the person you can go to.
Somebody will be there. I think when you ask for help.
There are people there for you, guaranteed. You may reach out. Yep.
Your team members probably will be like the Houston support role.
Absolutely.
Working with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we still, my astronaut colleagues, almost every day I speak to somebody that I worked with. It's interesting now. We don't talk about what we did. What we did. We always talked about like flying in spaceships. Now we talk about other stuff. But you build those bonds with people, and that I think was the best thing about being an astronaut. One, of course, was flying in space, but the second thing was the relationships that you build. And I think every organization should strive for that, to try to build those strong relationships with the people that you work with that could last a lifetime, like they have, fortunately, in my case, with a lot of my astronauts.
It reminded me a quote from Leonardo da Vinci. I think he says, when you have tasted the taste of the sky, you will always look up.
Yeah, I think I look up all the time.
Something like that. It's I think that's what you do, probably. Yeah. You will always look up.
I do. It's hard to do that. When I'm in New York City, it's hard to do that. Because I spend part of my time in New York City, and part of the time I'm out on Long Island. But out on Long Island, where I grew up, you could see the sky. And what I always like to do is that in the beginning of the day, I like looking at the sun coming up. If I'm up that early, or just remind myself that the sun is there. And what I always like to finish the day is to just go outside. I have a dog, so I walk the dog. So but to go outside and look up and look at the stars. And that's the way I like to end my days before I go to bed. So,
perfect. Yeah. I think my final question will be to if someone wants to unblock the remaining mysteries of the universe, which are a lot, I think, in the future.
Yes. Yeah.
What can be the career steps one can actually follow? When we think about the space exploration topic nowadays, the commercialization and scientific explorations, I think, take new areas as well. We have in the past, that was very much an exclusive area to NASA. But now the space flight and space exploration is becoming a more commercial area as well. So if anybody, he or she, a girl or a boy, wants to follow his or her career in the space exploration, what would you what would your advice be?
My advice is to try to find out what you really like, what you want to learn more about. In school, you take lots of different classes. You get to do activities. You get to play sports. You get to try art, music. There's so many things that you're exposed to, hopefully, at an early age, especially now we can see things on the internet and so on. Try to see what interests you. If spaceflight interests you, that's great. But there's so many different things you can do within spaceflight. What I noticed with my colleagues, for example, I'm an engineer. The reason I became an engineer was I liked math. I just liked math when I was growing up. I liked it. It was like playing games to me. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the other subjects as well, but I liked math. And when I got to high school, I also liked physics, which I thought was taking math and figuring out other problems that were like real world problems, you know, how things move and so on. And so I looked into what I could study in college, and there was math and physics and engineering. So I decided to become an engineer. And that's how I made my decision, based on what I wanted to learn more about. And that led me down a path that eventually led me to becoming an astronaut, because I also had the interest in space, but I had an interest in robotics and other things along the way that I could apply to space. And then it worked out for me. If I would have tried to have done something else, it wouldn't have worked. You know, if I was, well, I've got to become a medical doctor, I've got to become an astronomer. That wouldn't, you know, for me, it was engineering. But if you look at the people I flew in space with, on my two crews, I flew with, you know, we had 7 on, I flew with a total of maybe 10 people total, because a couple of us went on the missions together a second time. But I flew in space with test pilots. So a lot of people go to military careers. They fly airplanes. We've had guys that work in submarines. We have a Navy SEAL that just came back from space. So we have different military background. That's one way to go. And from the civilian ranks, it's really, really assorted. So on my flights, I flew in space with military test pilots, of course, who flew the space shuttle. We still have those in the astronaut office, even though we don't have a shuttle anymore. But I also flew in space with engineers, which would make sense maybe, and an astronomer and a physicist, and maybe that makes sense. But some of the more unusual ones, I think, were, for example, my friend Megan MacArthur was an oceanographer. She wanted to become an astronaut, but she discovered when she learned how to scuba dive in college. She was studying engineering, but she really enjoyed the sea. And she decided to become an oceanographer, and not to change her major from engineering, and when she went to grad school, to oceanography, because she really liked the sea and fish and learning about what was going on in the oceans and trying. But that's a science that allowed her to be eligible to be an astronaut, even though it was a sea. My friend Drew Feustel was a geologist. He just liked rocks. He also was a car mechanic, which made him a very good astronaut because he could fix stuff. But he liked rocks, and he studied geology, and he was working in an oil field, actually. He was a field geologist for an oil company when he was picked to be an astronaut. But geology, again, it's a science. He wasn't studying, you know, he wasn't even studying space geology, but that's what he liked. And my friend Rick Linehan, who I flew on my first flight with, is a veterinarian, because he always liked animals. He loved dolphins. He was delivering a baby dolphin when he was told, when the call came that he was going to become, he said he got a hold of him delivering a baby dolphin, and he had called NASA back to see what they wanted. They wanted to make him an astronaut. But that's what he loved. He loved animals. He worked in zoos. He worked with large animals, which made him a good, like a doctor for people too, because he was used to working on bigger animals too. So he just loved animals. So that's what he did. And it also made him an astronaut. But if you were saying, I want to be an astronaut, I'm going to become a veterinarian, you know, that wouldn't make sense maybe, but it makes sense if that's what you love. So what I think the best, it's hard to figure out what's going to happen. You know, you're saying, especially it's changing so much now. You know, back when I was a young person, you know, when I was in elementary school, high school, the only way to fly to space was to become a NASA astronaut or to become an astronaut for your country. You know, now it's a bit different. There's so many other opportunities out there that are just starting up now, that in 10 years from now, it's going to be really a lot different than it is now, I think. Okay. So we can try to be ready to see what happens and try to anticipate. But I think the best way, the easiest way to go about it is just, it may sound, I don't know if it's really easy, because you have to be honest with yourself and say, this is what I really love. And you may not be the thing you're best at. You may not be very good at it, but it's what you really love. That's what you have to try to do. And that's what I did. And be ready to take your lumps. Be ready for failure. I've failed a lot. You know, I had trouble in school all the way. from when I was 9 years old all the way up through graduate school at MIT. Even now, it's not easy to learn things, and you just have to be resilient. And if you don't do as well as you would like on things, just keep trying. Do the best that you can. I think that's something else I want young people to remember. It's not, you know, I want to be the best in the world. Yeah, that's great. What you really want to do is do the best that you can. That's what I tell my students. I teach at Columbia, and the advice I give to the new students is, you know, there's no like minimum or maximum, just do the best that you can, give the best effort, make the most out of your opportunity to learn things. And I think if you do that, don't give up, follow what you love. I think that gives you the best chance of being successful.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Those are great opportunities and great advice, not only for young people, I think for all of us. We need to be resilient, all of us. And
absolutely.
Thank you so much for this inspiring conversation.
My pleasure.
Stay safe and healthy.
Yes, and I hope we can do one of these in person sometime.
Yeah, you know, of course. I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, so it'd be good.
Although
I
this
look
is
forward to when
interesting.
we get back to doing events in person.
Me too. Maybe in the space.
Maybe that would be even better. Do it up there.
It's even better. It's even better.
Yeah.
See you then. Thank you. Thanks
All right.
very much. Thanks.
Thank you.